The mining station Prometheus hung in the void like a metal insect, its drilling arms reaching deep into the asteroid's heart. Captain Sarah Chen watched the extraction readouts on her command console, unaware that 3 sleek alien vessels were approaching from the shadow of a nearby moon. The Kethvar had been hunting human settlements for months, their crystalline blades capable of cutting through any known metal or energy shield. Marcus Webb, the station's chief engineer, was calibrating the main reactor when the first plasma burst struck their outer hull. The lights flickered and emergency alarms began their shrill song throughout the corridors. Sarah's fingers flew across her controls, activating defensive systems that had never been tested in real combat. The mining station wasn't built for war, but today it would have to become a fortress. The Kethvar ships moved like predators circling wounded prey. Their hulls shimmered with an otherworldly blue energy, and weapon ports opened along their sides like hungry mouths. Commander Zexthul stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, his 4 arms manipulating holographic displays with practiced precision. These humans would fall quickly, just like all the others. Their primitive technology could not withstand Kethvar superiority. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was in the medical bay when the attack began. She had been treating a minor burn injury on one of the miners, but now she found herself preparing for casualties on a scale the small station had never seen. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the alien ships firing their weapons in coordinated strikes. Each blast sent vibrations through the station's structure, making her surgical instruments rattle on their metal trays. The first boarding pod struck the docking bay with tremendous force, its impact sending a shockwave through 3 levels of the station. Steam hissed from broken pipes as emergency barriers slammed shut, trying to contain the breach. 8 Kethvar warriors emerged from the pod, their elongated forms covered in segmented armor that reflected the station's emergency lighting. Each carried a blade that hummed with deadly energy, capable of slicing through anything the humans could throw at them. Sarah ordered all non-essential personnel to the secure areas while she coordinated the defense with what little security force the mining station possessed. Lieutenant Jake Morrison led a team of 12 security officers, but they were equipped only with standard plasma rifles and basic body armor. Against an enemy that could cut through their strongest materials, they would need more than conventional weapons to survive. The Kethvar moved through the station's corridors with terrifying efficiency. Their blades carved through bulkhead doors as if they were made of paper, and their advanced sensors allowed them to track human heat signatures through multiple layers of metal. One by one, the station's defensive positions fell silent as the alien warriors advanced toward the command center. The humans' weapons seemed almost useless against enemies who could deflect energy blasts with their crystalline blades. Marcus worked frantically in the engineering section, trying to reroute power from the mining equipment to boost their failing shields. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he pulled cables and reconfigured systems that were never meant to be modified under combat conditions. He could hear the sound of weapons fire growing closer, and he knew that his friends and colleagues were fighting for their lives just a few corridors away. The first group of station defenders encountered the Kethvar near the main junction. Lieutenant Morrison watched in horror as his plasma bolts were absorbed harmlessly by the aliens' energy fields. One of his officers screamed as a crystalline blade passed through his armor and body, as if they offered no resistance at all. The remaining security team fell back, but they knew there was nowhere left to run. Dr. Rodriguez sealed herself in the medical bay and began destroying sensitive research data. If these aliens were collecting human technology and information, she would not make their job easy. She could hear the sound of metal being cut somewhere nearby, followed by human voices crying out in pain and fear. The station's population of 43 souls was being systematically eliminated by an enemy they could not hope to defeat through conventional means. Commander Zexthul observed the assault through his warriors' helmet cameras, satisfied with their progress. The humans fought bravely but futilely, their weapons and armor providing no meaningful defense against Kethvar technology. Soon this mining station would join the growing list of human settlements that had fallen before the superiority of his people. The galaxy would learn that resistance to Kethvar expansion was impossible. Sarah Chen stood in her command center, watching her people die on the security monitors. Every defensive position had been overrun, every weapon had proved ineffective, and every hope of survival seemed to be fading. The alien warriors were now only 2 corridors away from her location, their deadly blades cutting through everything the station could put in their path. She clutched her sidearm, knowing it would be useless but unwilling to surrender without a fight. The mining station's hull continued to ring with the impact of alien weapons as the 3 Kethvar ships maintained their bombardment. Inside, the surviving humans huddled in whatever secure areas they could find, listening to the sounds of their home being systematically destroyed. The aliens' crystalline blades had proved unbeatable, their technology too advanced, their warriors too skilled. It seemed that nothing could stop the Kethvar from claiming another victory in their relentless expansion across human space. Marcus Webb crouched behind a damaged control panel in the engineering section, his mind racing through possibilities that seemed increasingly desperate. The Kethvar were systematic in their destruction, but they had made one crucial mistake in their assessment of human technology. They assumed the mining equipment was primitive because it appeared crude compared to their crystalline weapons. What they didn't understand was that sometimes simple tools could be the most dangerous. The massive plasma drill that formed the heart of the station's mining operation was designed to cut through solid rock and metal ore. Its focused beam operated at temperatures that could melt titanium in seconds, and its power output dwarfed the station's weapon systems. Marcus began rerouting the drill's targeting system, his fingers flying across interfaces that sparked with damaged circuitry. If he could modify the beam's focus and redirect its mounting system, he might create a weapon that even Kethvar armor couldn't withstand. 3 corridors away, Dr. Rodriguez had discovered something unexpected in her medical bay. While treating the injured miner earlier, she'd been analyzing a strange crystalline fragment that had been found in one of the deeper mining shafts. Under her microscope, the fragment showed an unusual molecular structure that resonated at specific frequencies. When she accidentally knocked over a sonic scalpel, its high-pitched whine caused the crystal to vibrate and crack. The sound frequency was disrupting the alien material. Sarah Chen received Marcus's transmission just as the Kethvar began cutting through the command center's reinforced door. His voice crackled through the comm system, barely audible over the sound of energy weapons and screaming metal. He needed 3 minutes to complete his modifications, but the aliens would be through the barrier in less than 2. Sarah made a decision that would either save them all or ensure their deaths came more quickly. She opened every emergency vent in the command center and flooded the room with coolant gas from the life support systems. The thick white fog reduced visibility to 0, and the temperature dropped rapidly. When the Kethvar warriors finally breached the door, they found themselves in an environment their sensors couldn't penetrate effectively. Sarah used the confusion to slip past them, leading the aliens away from the command center and toward the mining platform where Marcus was working. Lieutenant Morrison and his remaining officers had regrouped in the station's main corridor, using overturned equipment and emergency barriers to create defensive positions. They had discovered that while their plasma rifles couldn't penetrate Kethvar armor, concentrated fire could temporarily overload the aliens' energy shields. It bought them seconds rather than minutes, but seconds were all they needed to coordinate their next desperate gambit. The security team began a fighting retreat toward the mining section, firing in coordinated volleys to keep the pursuing Kethvar warriors from advancing too quickly. Each fallen position brought the aliens closer to discovering Marcus's improvised weapon, but it also led them into areas where the station's industrial equipment could be turned against them. Heavy mining machinery, pressurized gas lines, and electromagnetic field generators became part of an increasingly dangerous obstacle course. Dr. Rodriguez had been experimenting with her sonic scalpel's frequency when she heard the sound of approaching footsteps in the medical bay's outer corridor. 2 Kethvar warriors were methodically checking each room, their crystalline blades humming with deadly energy. She adjusted the scalpel's output to match the resonance frequency she had discovered, hoping her theory about the alien technology's weakness was correct. When the first warrior entered her sanctuary, she activated the device. The high-pitched sonic pulse filled the medical bay with sound that seemed to make the very air vibrate. The lead Kethvar warrior stumbled, his crystalline blade flickering and sparking as its energy matrix became unstable. The resonance frequency was disrupting the quantum field that powered their weapons, causing feedback loops that threatened to overload their entire technological system. Elena had found their weakness, but she needed to survive long enough to share the discovery. Marcus completed the final connections on his modified mining drill, just as Sarah led the pursuing aliens into the mining chamber. The massive industrial platform groaned under the redirected power flow, as he brought the targeting system online. The plasma drill rotated on its heavy mounting brackets, its business end now pointing toward the entrance where the Kethvar would soon appear. He had turned a tool designed to break rock into a weapon capable of melting through almost anything. Commander Zexthul watched his warriors progress through their helmet feeds, noting with satisfaction how quickly the human defenses were crumbling. His people had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, and these miners posed no greater challenge than any other primitive civilization. The crystalline blade technology that made his warriors nearly invincible had never encountered a material it couldn't cut or an energy field it couldn't penetrate. The first Kethvar warrior entered the mining chamber with his blade raised, expecting to find more helpless humans cowering behind inadequate cover. Instead, he found himself facing a massive industrial drilling platform that hummed with barely contained energy. Marcus triggered the firing sequence, and a focused beam of superheated plasma erupted from the mining equipment with the force of a small star. The concentrated plasma stream struck the alien warrior's energy shield and kept burning. For 3 seconds, advanced Kethvar technology held against the industrial-grade mining beam. Then the shield collapsed, the armor vaporized, and the warrior simply ceased to exist. The plasma drill had succeeded where conventional weapons had failed, proving that sometimes the most effective military tool was one that had never been designed for warfare. Sarah watched in amazement as the mining equipment's beam carved through the chamber wall behind where the Kethvar warrior had been standing. The molten metal glowed white-hot, and the air itself seemed to burn where the plasma had passed. Marcus had created a weapon that could match alien technology, but they still faced overwhelming odds. 7 more warriors remained aboard the station, and their ships continued to pound the outer hull with increasing intensity. The surviving Kethvar immediately adapted their tactics, using the station's corridors and equipment to block line of sight to the mining drill. They began moving through maintenance shafts and alternate routes, trying to approach the weapon from angles where it couldn't target them. The aliens' tactical flexibility was impressive, but they had underestimated human ingenuity and the home field advantage that came with fighting aboard a structure the defenders knew intimately. Dr. Rodriguez's discovery spread through the station's communication system like wildfire. Her transmission reached every surviving human, explaining how specific sound frequencies could disrupt Kethvar technology. The medical sonic equipment wasn't the only device capable of generating the right resonance patterns. Every sonic welder, ultrasonic cleaner, and frequency generator in the mining station could potentially become a weapon against their seemingly invincible enemies. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb immediately understood the implications. The station's industrial sonic equipment was scattered throughout the facility, used for cleaning ore samples, welding metal joints, and testing structural integrity. These tools had never been designed as weapons, but their frequency output could be modified to match Elena's specifications. He began sending override codes to every sonic device on the station, turning maintenance equipment into an improvised defense network. The Kethvar warriors advancing through the station's maintenance corridors found themselves in an increasingly hostile environment. Lieutenant Morrison's security team had positioned themselves near key junction points, armed with modified sonic welders and portable frequency generators. When the aliens approached, the humans activated their improvised weapons simultaneously, filling the enclosed spaces with resonance patterns that made the crystalline blades flicker and spark uncontrollably. Sarah Chen coordinated the defense from a mobile command post, using the station's internal sensors to track alien movement, while directing her people to areas where they could best utilize their newfound tactical advantage. The Kethvar were adapting quickly, but they were fighting an enemy that had suddenly gained the ability to neutralize their most powerful weapons. The balance of power was shifting, and both sides knew it. Commander Zexthul felt the first stirrings of concern as his warriors reported increasing equipment failures. The humans had discovered something about Kethvar technology that even his own scientists didn't fully understand. The crystalline blade matrix was quantum engineered to be nearly indestructible, but it relied on specific harmonic frequencies to maintain its coherent energy field. Disrupt those frequencies and the entire weapon system became unstable. The mining station's corridor battles became a deadly game of technical innovation. The Kethvar tried to shield their weapons from sonic interference by adjusting their armor's protective fields, while the humans worked to increase the power and range of their improvised frequency weapons. Every engagement taught both sides new lessons about their opponent's capabilities and weaknesses. Marcus had turned the station's central processing area into a sonic bombardment zone. Multiple frequency generators surrounded the main computer core, creating overlapping fields of disruption that made it impossible for Kethvar weapons to function properly. When 3 alien warriors tried to assault the position, they found their blades failing completely within the electromagnetic interference field. Without their primary weapons, they were forced to rely on secondary plasma projectors that the humans could actually defend against. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to refine her frequency calculations, using the station's limited scientific equipment to analyze fragments of disabled Kethvar technology. Each piece of alien equipment she examined revealed new vulnerabilities in their quantum engineering. The crystalline matrices weren't just weapons. They were the foundation of Kethvar shields, sensors, and communication systems. The right frequency could potentially disable their entire technological infrastructure. The battle for the mining platform became a crucial turning point. The Kethvar needed to destroy Marcus's modified plasma drill before it could be used against more of their warriors, but approaching the weapon meant crossing an area saturated with sonic interference that rendered their primary advantages useless. They were forced to fight like conventional soldiers, using cover and tactics rather than relying on superior technology to overwhelm their enemies. Lieutenant Morrison's team had learned to coordinate their sonic weapons with conventional firearms, creating combination attacks that were proving devastatingly effective. They would use frequency generators to disrupt alien shields and weapons, then follow up with concentrated plasma rifle fire that could actually damage Kethvar armor when it wasn't protected by energy fields. The aliens' seeming invincibility was crumbling under sustained human ingenuity. The station's hull continued to shake under bombardment from the 3 Kethvar ships, but even their ship-based weapons were showing signs of interference. The humans had begun broadcasting the disruptive frequencies through the station's external communication arrays, creating a field effect that extended several kilometers into space. The alien vessels found their targeting systems becoming increasingly unreliable as they tried to maintain their attack patterns. Sarah Chen realized that they were no longer just fighting for survival. They had a chance to actually win this engagement. The knowledge of how to disrupt Kethvar technology was spreading through human space via emergency transmissions. Other colonies and military installations were already beginning to experiment with sonic weapons based on Elena's discoveries. What had started as a mining station's desperate last stand was becoming the foundation for humanity's first effective defense against alien invasion. The surviving Kethvar warriors began to show signs of tactical uncertainty. For the first time since the battle began, their training and experience had prepared them to fight enemies whose weapons couldn't penetrate their defenses and whose technology was inferior to their own. They had never faced an opponent that could turn their greatest strengths into critical vulnerabilities through simple scientific observation and creative engineering. Commander Zexthol made the decision to commit his ship's remaining boarding forces to the assault. 12 additional warriors launched from the Kethvar vessels in armored pods, their goal to overwhelm the human defenders through sheer numbers before their technological advantages could be completely negated. The mining station's population was small, and even with their new weapons, they couldn't hold multiple positions indefinitely against a determined assault. The new wave of Kethvar boarders approached the station with modified tactics, using rapid movement and coordinated attacks to minimize their exposure to sonic interference. Their armor had been reconfigured to provide better protection against frequency weapons, and they carried backup weapon systems that didn't rely on crystalline technology. The aliens were adapting to human countermeasures, proving that their military doctrine was as flexible as their technology was advanced. The second wave of boarding pods struck the mining station with thunderous impacts that sent vibrations through every level. Marcus Webb watched from his defensive position as 12 fresh Kethvar warriors emerged from their assault craft, these ones moving with different tactics than their predecessors. Their armor showed modifications that gleamed with different energy patterns, and their secondary weapons hummed with unfamiliar power signatures. The aliens had learned from their losses and adapted their approach. Dr. Rodriguez detected the changes immediately through her makeshift sensor array. The new warriors carried frequency dampeners that created localized dead zones around their positions, areas where sonic weapons lost their effectiveness against HFY technology. The aliens had essentially created portable immunity fields. Though the equipment appeared bulky and limited in range, Elena began calculating new frequency combinations that might penetrate these countermeasures. Sarah Chen coordinated the defense from her mobile command center, watching as the fresh alien forces split into 3 teams and began simultaneous attacks on critical station systems. One group moved toward the power generation facility, another targeted the communication array, and the third advanced directly toward the mining platform, where Marcus had positioned his converted plasma drill. The HFY were no longer trying to simply eliminate the human defenders. They were seeking to cripple the station's ability to resist. Lieutenant Morrison's security team found themselves fighting a different kind of battle against enemies who had learned to counter their sonic weapons. The modified HFY armor could resist frequency disruption for several minutes before succumbing, forcing the humans to maintain sustained bombardment while avoiding return fire from alien plasma projectors. The engagement distances had increased and the fighting had become more tactical and less desperate. The assault on the power generation facility became a deadly game of engineering warfare. The HFY team used their frequency dampeners to create safe zones where their crystalline blades could function normally, while the human defenders tried to overwhelm these protective fields with multiple sonic sources operating in coordination. Sparks flew from damaged equipment as both sides used the station's industrial infrastructure as weapons and obstacles. Marcus realized that his plasma drill, while devastating against individual targets, was too slow and cumbersome to effectively engage multiple enemies using coordinated tactics. He began modifying the mining laser array, a network of smaller cutting beams used for precision work on ore samples. By linking their targeting systems and synchronizing their firing patterns, he could create a web of intersecting plasma streams that would be nearly impossible for the aliens to avoid. Commander Zexathul observed the battle through multiple camera feeds, analyzing how quickly the humans had adapted to counter HFY countermeasures. These miners and technicians were showing a level of tactical creativity that rivaled trained military forces. Their ability to improvise weapons from industrial equipment and coordinate complex defensive operations suggested that human resistance might be more formidable than his intelligence reports had indicated. The battle for the communication array became crucial when Dr. Rodriguez realized that the station's external transmitters could be used to broadcast disruptive frequencies across a much wider area. If she could reach the communication control center, she might be able to create an interference field large enough to affect all 3 HFY ships simultaneously. The aliens seemed to understand this possibility because they were fighting with desperate intensity. To prevent human access to the transmission equipment, Sarah led a team of maintenance workers through the station's service tunnels, using their intimate knowledge of the facility's layout to outmaneuver the alien assault teams. The HFY were following main corridors and obvious routes, but the humans could move through spaces too small for armored warriors and emerge behind enemy positions. The home field advantage was proving more valuable than anyone had initially realized. The modified laser array came online just as a team of 4 HFY warriors breached the mining platform's outer defenses. Marcus triggered the synchronized firing sequence, and multiple precision cutting beams created a deadly geometric pattern throughout the chamber. The aliens' frequency dampeners provided some protection, but the concentrated laser fire was too intense and came from too many angles. 2 warriors fell immediately, while the others were forced to retreat behind heavy equipment. Dr. Rodriguez reached the communication control center through a maintenance shaft. Emerging behind the alien team that was trying to destroy the transmission array, she activated a portable frequency generator at maximum power, creating a focused disruption field that overloaded the HFY dampening equipment. For 30 seconds, their technological advantages disappeared completely, and the human security forces were able to drive them back with concentrated plasma rifle fire. The external transmission array activated with a low hum that quickly rose beyond human hearing range. Elena had calculated the optimal frequency pattern to disrupt HFY ship systems, and she broadcasted at maximum power toward the 3 alien vessels. Almost immediately, The bombardment of the station's hull became erratic as the ship's targeting systems began to malfunction. The tactical situation was shifting in humanity's favor. Lieutenant Morrison's team had learned to use the station's industrial equipment as force multipliers in their battles with the modified Kethvar warriors. Electromagnet cranes, pressurized gas systems, and heavy mining machinery became weapons in a conflict that resembled guerrilla warfare more than a conventional military engagement. The humans couldn't match alien technology directly, but they could use their environment and creativity to level the playing field. The power generation facility became the site of the most intense fighting as both sides recognized its strategic importance. The Kethvar needed to disable the station's energy production to shut down all the improvised human weapons, while the defenders had to maintain power to continue their resistance. The battle raged through chambers filled with massive generators and high-voltage equipment that made every weapon discharge potentially catastrophic. Marcus's synchronized laser array was proving devastatingly effective against Kethvar warriors whose frequency dampeners had been damaged or overloaded. The precision-cutting beams could slice through alien armor when it wasn't protected by energy fields, and the geometric firing patterns made it nearly impossible to find safe positions within the mining chamber. The aliens were learning that human industrial technology could be just as dangerous as military weapons. Sarah Chen watched the tactical displays and realized that the Kethvar were beginning to show signs of coordination breakdown. Their assault teams were no longer operating with the smooth efficiency that had characterized the initial invasion. The frequency interference was affecting their communication systems, and the unexpected human resistance had disrupted their planned timetables. For the first time since the battle began, the aliens appeared to be reacting to human actions rather than controlling the tempo of the engagement. Commander Zexthul felt something he had never experienced in decades of conquest: uncertainty about the outcome of a battle. His tactical displays showed that human resistance was not only continuing, but actually strengthening as the engagement progressed. The mining station's defenders had transformed from helpless prey into a coordinated fighting force that was adapting faster than his warriors could counter their innovations. The fundamental assumption of Kethvar superiority was being challenged. By miners and technicians using improvised weapons, the 3 alien ships found themselves struggling to maintain formation as the frequency interference from the station's communication array grew stronger. Their crystalline control systems were experiencing cascade failures that affected everything from navigation to weapon targeting. Ships that had dominated human space for months were now having difficulty maintaining basic operational status against an enemy they had dismissed as primitive just hours earlier. Dr. Rodriguez made a breakthrough discovery while analyzing damaged Kethvar equipment in the communication center. The aliens' quantum crystalline technology wasn't just vulnerable to specific frequencies. It was actually dependent on harmonic resonance patterns for its basic operation. Every piece of their equipment was essentially a musical instrument that could be disrupted by playing the wrong notes. She began broadcasting complex interference patterns that would create destructive resonance in multiple Kethvar systems simultaneously. Sarah Chen received reports from across the station that alien warriors were beginning to experience equipment failures beyond just their primary weapons. Their armor's life support systems were malfunctioning, their communication devices were producing static, and even their movement enhancement technology was becoming unreliable. The Kethvar were discovering that their complete dependence on crystalline quantum engineering had created a critical vulnerability that humans were exploiting with increasing sophistication. Marcus Webb realized that he could turn the entire mining station into a massive sonic weapon by synchronizing all the industrial equipment to produce coordinated frequency patterns. The drilling platforms, excavation machinery, ore processing systems, and structural support mechanisms could all be programmed to vibrate at specific frequencies. The station itself would become a gigantic instrument capable of disrupting Kethvar technology across multiple kilometers of space. The remaining alien warriors aboard the station found themselves fighting an increasingly desperate battle against enemies who seemed to grow more dangerous with each passing minute. Their technological advantages were disappearing one by one as human ingenuity found new ways to exploit Kethvar weaknesses. Warriors who had conquered entire star systems were being outmaneuvered by mining engineers using industrial equipment in ways it was never designed for. Lieutenant Morrison's security team had established a defensive perimeter around the central command area, using overlapping fields of sonic interference to create zones where HFY technology simply couldn't function. The aliens were forced to approach on foot, using basic tactics and conventional weapons that put them on equal footing with human defenders. The playing field had been leveled through science and creativity, rather than superior firepower. The power generation facility became the focal point of the battle, as both sides recognized that control of the station's energy systems would determine the final outcome. The HFY assault team fought with increasing desperation, as they watched their equipment fail around them, while human defenders coordinated industrial machinery and improvised weapons with growing confidence. Every minute that passed gave the humans more time to develop new countermeasures. Commander Zexthal made the decision to withdraw his remaining boarding parties and attempt to destroy the mining station through orbital bombardment. His ship's weapons were still functional despite the frequency interference, and overwhelming firepower might succeed where tactical precision had failed. But as he gave the order to commence bombardment, his tactical officer reported that their targeting computers were experiencing critical malfunctions. The mining station's transformation into a massive sonic transmitter was complete. Marcus activated the synchronized frequency generation system, and every piece of industrial equipment on the facility began to vibrate in harmonic coordination. The quantum resonance field that resulted was unlike anything the HFY had ever encountered. Their ship's crystalline systems began to experience failures that cascaded through every level of their technology. Dr. Rodriguez watched her instruments register the effects of the station-wide frequency bombardment on the alien vessels. Their shields were fluctuating wildly. Their weapon systems were producing random energy discharges, and their navigation equipment was providing contradictory readings. The HFY ships were essentially being driven insane by harmonic interference that attacked the fundamental principles of their quantum engineering. Sarah Chen coordinated the final push against the remaining alien boarding parties. With their equipment failing and their technological advantages negated, the HFY warriors were simply outnumbered by human defenders who knew every corridor and maintenance shaft in the facility. The aliens who had seemed invincible just hours before were now trapped aboard a station that had become actively hostile to their very presence. The first HFY ship suffered a critical system failure when its main crystalline matrix resonance cascade reached a critical threshold. The quantum field collapse that followed disabled every piece of technology aboard the vessel, leaving it drifting powerless in space. The crew found themselves stranded in a ship that had become little more than an elaborately shaped metal shell. Their conquest of human space had ended with their own technology turning against them. Marcus's converted mining laser array tracked the disabled alien vessel with mechanical precision. The concentrated plasma beam that had been designed to cut through solid rock struck the powerless ship and began carving through its hull like a hot knife through butter. The HFY had built their vessels to withstand energy weapons, but not industrial cutting tools, operating at full power with unlimited energy reserves. The second alien ship attempted to retreat, but found its propulsion systems failing as the harmonic interference field expanded beyond the station's immediate vicinity. The quantum crystalline technology that powered their faster-than-light drives was particularly susceptible to frequency disruption, and the resonance patterns were creating instabilities that threatened to tear the ship apart from the inside. The HFY were learning that their greatest technological achievements had become their greatest vulnerabilities. Lieutenant Morrison led a final assault against the last group of alien warriors trapped in the station's lower levels. Without their advanced equipment, the HFY fought with the desperation of soldiers who knew they were beaten. But desperation couldn't overcome the fundamental tactical disadvantage of fighting an enemy on their home ground, with improvised weapons that had proven more effective than military technology. The mining station's crew had won their battle through innovation, creativity, and the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. The second HFY ship's attempt at retreat became a catastrophic failure as its quantum drive systems collapsed under harmonic pressure. The vessel's crystalline power matrix experienced a cascade resonance that sent feedback loops through every system aboard the craft. Commander Zexthal watched his instruments die one by One as the ship that had conquered dozens of human colonies became a powerless hulk drifting toward the asteroid. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the expanding frequency field from her position in the communication center, making real-time adjustments to the harmonic patterns as she observed their effects on alien technology. Each modification made the disruptive interference more precise and more devastating. She was essentially conducting a symphony of destruction that used the Kethavar's own technological sophistication against them in ways their engineers had never anticipated. The mining station's crew found themselves in the unprecedented position of having captured several Kethavar warriors whose equipment had failed completely. Without their crystalline armor and weapons, the aliens were revealed to be surprisingly fragile beings who had relied entirely on technology to make them formidable opponents. Sarah Chen ordered that they be treated as prisoners of war, though the concept seemed to confuse the aliens who had never expected to survive a military defeat. Marcus Webb's industrial laser array continued its methodical destruction of disabled Kethavar vessels. The concentrated plasma streams carved through alien hull metal with patient precision, creating precisely placed breaches that disabled ship systems without necessarily killing the crews. The mining engineer had become an artillery commander, using equipment designed for peaceful excavation to eliminate threats that had terrorized human space for months. The third Kethavar ship made a desperate attempt to destroy the mining station through a ramming attack, its commander choosing death over the humiliation of defeat by a primitive enemy. But the vessel's navigation systems were so disrupted by frequency interference that it missed the station entirely, passing harmlessly through empty space, before its momentum carried it into the asteroid field, where it impacted a large rock formation with tremendous force. Lieutenant Morrison's security team secured the last pockets of alien resistance aboard the station, finding Kethavar warriors who seemed almost relieved to surrender rather than continue fighting with equipment that had become unreliable and dangerous. The crystalline weapons were actually beginning to overload and explode, creating as much danger to their users as to their intended targets. The aliens' greatest military assets had become liabilities. Sarah Chen established communication with the surviving Kethavar crews, using the station's translation protocols to begin the first diplomatic contact between the species that didn't involve immediate violence. The aliens were clearly shaken by their defeat, struggling to understand how their superior technology had been neutralized by what they considered primitive industrial equipment. Their certainty about their own superiority had been shattered along with their weapons. Dr. Rodriguez made contact with human military forces throughout the sector, transmitting detailed specifications for the frequency disruption technology that had proven so effective against Kethavar equipment. Within hours, every human colony and military installation was beginning to construct sonic weapons based on her discoveries. The knowledge that could turn alien technological advantages into critical vulnerabilities was spreading through human space faster than the Kethavar could adapt. Commander Zexthul found himself a prisoner aboard his own ship, his crew unable to restore power or communications as the harmonic interference continued to disrupt their crystalline technology. The warrior who had led the conquest of 17 human settlements was now dependent on his former enemies for basic life support. The reversal of fortune was so complete that it seemed almost impossible to comprehend. The mining station Prometheus had become the center of a tactical revolution that would reshape the balance of power between humans and their alien adversaries. Marcus's improvised weapons, Elena's scientific discoveries, and Sarah's tactical coordination had proven that human ingenuity could overcome seemingly impossible odds when faced with extinction. The captured Kethavar technology provided invaluable intelligence about alien capabilities and weaknesses. Dr. Rodriguez led teams of human scientists who began reverse engineering the crystalline quantum systems, not to copy them but to understand how they could be more effectively disrupted. Every piece of alien equipment became a textbook for developing more sophisticated countermeasures against future invasions. News of the victory at Prometheus spread through human space like wildfire, carried by emergency transmissions and military communications networks. Colonies that had been preparing for evacuation suddenly found themselves developing defensive systems based on the mining station's discoveries. The psychological impact was as important as the tactical advantage. Humans had proven they could fight back against alien conquest. The surviving Kethvar crews were transferred to secure facilities where they could be studied and questioned about their empire's intentions and capabilities. The aliens seemed genuinely bewildered by their defeat, struggling to understand how a species they considered technologically inferior had neutralized their most advanced weapons. Their certainty about galactic conquest had been replaced by confusion and doubt. Marcus Webb found himself appointed as the chief military engineer for the sector's new defense initiatives. His ability to turn industrial equipment into effective weapons had caught the attention of human military commanders who recognized the potential for applying similar innovations on a larger scale. Mining stations, manufacturing facilities, and research installations throughout human space began retrofitting their equipment for defensive purposes. Sarah Chen received communications from the Earth Defense Council requesting detailed reports on the battle tactics that had proven effective against Kethvar forces. Her coordination of civilian personnel in military operations had demonstrated that human colonies could defend themselves without waiting for military reinforcements. The decentralized defense strategy that emerged from her experiences would become the foundation for humanity's resistance to alien expansion. The frequency disruption technology developed by Dr. Rodriguez was being implemented on military vessels and defensive installations throughout the sector. Ships that had been helpless against Kethvar crystalline weapons suddenly found themselves capable of disabling alien technology from safe distances. The balance of power in space combat had shifted dramatically in humanity's favor through scientific innovation rather than military buildup. Lieutenant Morrison's security protocols became the template for training civilian defenders on human colonies. His successful coordination of improvised weapons and industrial equipment with conventional military tactics showed that ordinary citizens could become effective soldiers when properly organized and equipped. The mining station's victory had proven that every human settlement was a potential fortress. The 3 disabled Kethvar ships were salvaged and studied extensively, providing human scientists with unprecedented access to alien technology. While the crystalline quantum systems remained too complex to fully understand, researchers were able to identify multiple vulnerabilities that could be exploited in future encounters. The knowledge gained from these captured vessels would accelerate human technological development by decades. Commander Zex Thul's interrogation revealed that the Kethvar Empire had been expanding through the galaxy for centuries, encountering little effective resistance from the species they conquered. Their military doctrine was based on the assumption that crystalline quantum technology was fundamentally superior to any alternative approach. The defeat at Prometheus had challenged this core belief and created uncertainty throughout their command structure. The mining station's transformation into a military installation was completed within weeks of the battle. New frequency generation equipment, upgraded defensive systems, and improved communication arrays turned Prometheus into a fortress that could defend the entire sector against alien attack. The facility that had been targeted for easy conquest became the cornerstone of human resistance. 6 months after the Battle of Prometheus, the strategic situation in human space had transformed beyond recognition. What had begun as a desperate last stand by a mining crew had evolved into a comprehensive defense network that spanned dozens of star systems. The frequency disruption technology pioneered by Dr. Rodriguez had been refined and deployed on every human world, creating an invisible barrier that rendered Kethvar crystalline weapons ineffective. Across vast regions of space, the Kethvar Empire found itself facing an enemy that no longer cowered before their technological superiority. Human colonies that had once been easy targets now bristled with sonic weapons and harmonic disruptors. Mining stations, research facilities, and manufacturing centers had been converted into fortress worlds capable of defending themselves against invasion fleets. The aliens discovered that conquest was no longer a matter of overwhelming primitive resistance with advanced technology. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Earth defense ship Prometheus, named in honor of the mining station where humanity had first learned to fight back. As the vessel's captain, she commanded a crew trained in the tactical innovations that had proven so effective against alien forces. The ship itself was a testament to human adaptability, equipped with industrial-grade plasma weapons and frequency disruptors that could disable Kethvar technology from incredible distances. Dr. Rodriguez had become the leading expert on alien quantum engineering. her research providing the scientific foundation for humanity's new military doctrine. Her laboratories produced increasingly sophisticated countermeasures against HFY technology, while her training programs taught human scientists and engineers to recognize and exploit weaknesses in crystalline systems. The mining station's medical officer had become one of the most important military assets in human space. Marcus Webb led the engineering teams that were retrofitting human ships and installations with the improvised weapons systems he had pioneered. His designs had evolved from desperate modifications of mining equipment to sophisticated military hardware that could be mass-produced and deployed throughout the fleet. The chief engineer who had turned a Paredes plasma drill into a ship killer now supervised the construction of weapons that could destroy entire HFY squadrons. The psychological impact on the HFY Empire was becoming increasingly apparent through intelligence gathered from captured alien personnel. Their military commanders were struggling to develop new tactics against an enemy that had learned to turn their greatest strengths into critical vulnerabilities. The certainty that had driven their galactic expansion was being eroded by repeated defeats against human forces that fought with weapons their science had never anticipated. Lieutenant Morrison commanded a training facility where human security forces learned to coordinate industrial equipment with military tactics. His methods had been adopted throughout human space, creating a generation of defenders who could transform any civilian installation into a military fortress within hours. The security officer who had held the line against impossible odds now taught others to achieve similar victories. The captured HFY ships had been reverse-engineered to produce hybrid vessels that combined alien propulsion systems with human weapon technologies. These new warships could travel at faster-than-light speeds while carrying frequency disruptors powerful enough to disable entire enemy fleets. The technology that had once been used to conquer human worlds was now being turned against its creators. Commander Zex Thul remained in human custody, but his knowledge of HFY military operations had proven invaluable in predicting and countering alien strategies. The former conqueror had become an unwilling advisor in humanity's defense planning, his expertise helping human commanders understand how to exploit weaknesses in enemy tactics. The warrior who had never expected to survive a military defeat was now contributing to his own empire's downfall. The frequency disruption network that protected human space continued to expand as new colonies joined the defensive alliance. Each installation added its industrial equipment to the harmonic interference field that made HFY technology unreliable throughout human-controlled regions. The invisible barrier that had started as a desperate improvisation was becoming an impenetrable shield that protected entire star systems. Human exploration and colonization resumed with new confidence, as settlers knew they could defend themselves against alien attack. The mining station victory had proven that ordinary citizens with the right knowledge and equipment could defeat seemingly superior enemies. New worlds were settled with defensive systems already in place, creating an expanding network of fortress colonies that could support each other against invasion. The HFY Empire's expansion had been halted for the first time in centuries. Their military doctrine required fundamental revision in the face of an enemy that could neutralize their primary tactical advantages. Reports from the front lines indicated that alien forces were beginning to avoid direct confrontation with human defenders, preferring to seek easier targets among species that hadn't learned to counter crystalline technology. Dr. Rodriguez's research teams made a final breakthrough that would ensure humanity's long-term security against alien invasion. They developed portable frequency generators that could disrupt HFY technology across interstellar distances, effectively creating dead zones where crystalline quantum systems simply couldn't function. The deployment of these devices throughout human space would make invasion impossible for any force dependent on the technological principles that had made the HFY Empire dominant. The mining station Prometheus remained operational as both a working facility and a memorial to human ingenuity under pressure. Visitors came from across human space to see where ordinary miners and technicians had proven that determination and creativity could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The asteroid that had almost become humanity's grave had instead become the foundation stone of an empire that would defend itself against any threat. The transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved from helpless victims of alien conquest to confident defenders of their own destiny. The Cathvar Empire's expansion had not only been stopped but reversed, as human forces began liberating worlds that had been conquered by crystalline weapons. The species that had once seemed primitive and defenseless had become the galactic champions of freedom, proving that the strongest blades could be shattered by an unbreakable will to survive and protect what mattered most.